Henry George Daily Devotional, episode 28, book 2, chapter 2, Inference from Facts, which is about Malthusian theory. We're looking at them facts. Here we go. Nor what Malthus failed to show has anyone since him shown. The globe may be surveyed, and this reminder, this was published in 1879, so who knows, maybe somebody in the past 100 years has revitalized Malthus's theory. I don't know. The globe may be surveyed and history may be reviewed in vain for any insistence of a considerable country in which poverty and want can be fairly attributed to the pressure of an increasing population. I say considerable country, this is a footnote, because there may be islands such as Pitcairn's Island cut off from communication with the rest of the world and consequently from the exchanges which are necessary to the improved modes of production resorted to as population becomes dense, which may seem to offer examples in point. A moment's reflection, however, will show that these exceptional cases are not in point. Interesting. I did just read Mumbai in Ruin, this article about Mumbai, and its overall conclusion is we need to build way more housing, especially get rid of the FAR, which is floor to area. What is floor area ratios that is really retarding the development in Mumbai, and its overpopulation, quote unquote, is the result of bad housing policy. Unfortunately, this article here in Asterisk Magazine makes no mention of Georgism or a land value tax. It simply advocates for the more typical cocktail of YIMBY policies. I'm thinking about emailing this guy. I forgot about that. I read this a couple days ago. And asking this guy what he thinks of Georgism. We will continue with George now. Whatever be the possible dangers involved in the power of human increase, they have never yet appeared. Whatever may sometime be, this never yet has been the evil that has afflicted mankind. Population always tending to overpass the limit of subsistence. How is it then? Alright, yeah, that's what hasn't happened. I don't know. Yeah, this evil has never yet afflicted mankind, the population tending to overpass the limit of subsistence. How is it then that this globe of ours, after all the thousands, and it is now thought millions of years, that man has been upon the earth, is yet so thinly populated? How is it then that so many of the hives of human life are now deserted, that once cultivated fields are rank with jungle, and the wild beast licks her cubs, where once were busy haunts of men? It is a fact that as we count our increasing millions, we are apt to lose sight of. Nevertheless, it is a fact that, in what we know of the world's history, decadence of population is as common as increase. Whether the aggregate population of the earth is now greater than at any previous epoch is a speculation which can deal only with guesses. I feel pretty confident, this is me speaking, not George, that there are more people on Earth now than there ever has been. But that is, I am trusting in science, archaeology, anthropology, the establishment. Alright, back to George. Since Montesquieu, in the early part of the last century, asserted what was then probably the prevailing impression, that the population of the earth had, since the Christian era, greatly declined, opinion has run the other way. But the tendency of recent investigation and exploration has been to give greater credit to what have been deemed the exaggerated accounts of ancient historians and travelers, and to reveal indications of denser populations and more advanced civilizations that had before been suspected, as well as of a higher antiquity in the human race. I will say, in the past couple of years, there have been more and more discoveries of older and older evidences of human civilization, which is kind of cool, kind of exciting. Maybe we don't know everything we think we know? Back to George. And in basing our estimates of population upon the development of trade, the advance of the arts, and the size of cities, we are apt to underrate the density of population which the intensive cultivations characteristic of the earlier civilizations are capable of maintaining, especially where irrigation is resorted to. Okay. As we may see from the closely cultivated districts of China and Europe, a very great population of simple habits can readily exist with very little commerce and a much lower stage of those arts in which modern progress has been most marked, and without that tendency to concentrate in cities which modern populations show. Footnote. As may be seen from the map in H.H. Bancroft's Native Races, the state of Veracruz is not one of those parts of Mexico noticeable for its antiquities, yet Hugo Fink of Cordova, writing to the Smithsonian Institution, reports in 1870, says there's hardly a foot in the whole state in which, by excavation, either a broken obsidian knife or a broken piece of pottery is not found, that the whole country is intersected with parallel lines of stones intended to keep the earth from washing away in the rainy season, which shows that even the very poorest land was put into requisition, and that it is impossible to resist the conclusion that the ancient population was at least as dense as it is at present in the most populous districts of Europe. Footnote noted. We continue. Be this as it may, the only continent which we can be sure now contains a larger population than ever before is Europe. But this is not true of all parts of Europe. Certainly Greece, the Mediterranean islands, and Turkey in Europe, probably Italy, possibly Spain, have contained larger populations than now. And this may be likewise true of northwestern and parts of Central and Eastern Europe. America also has increased in population during the time we know of it, but this increase is not so great as is popularly supposed, some estimates giving to Peru alone at the time of the discovery a greater population than now exists on the whole continent of South America. And all the indications are that previous to the discovery the population of America had been declining. What great nations have run their course? What empires have arisen and fallen in, that new world which is the old? We can only imagine, but fragments of massive ruins yet attest a grander pre-Incan civilization. Amid the tropical forests of Yucatan and Central America are the remnants of great cities forgotten ere the Spanish conquest. Mexico, as Cortez found it, showed the superimposition of barbarism upon a higher social development, while through a great part of what is now the United States are scattered mounds which prove a once relatively dense population, and here and there, as in the Lake Superior copper mines, are traces of higher arts than were known to the Indians with whom the whites came in contact. As to Africa, there can be no question. Northern Africa can contain but a fraction of the population that it had in ancient times. The Nile Valley once held an enormously greater population than now, while south of the Sahara there is nothing to show increase within historic times, and widespread depopulation was certainly caused by the slave trade. As for Asia, which even now contains more than half the human race, though it is not much more than half as densely populated as Europe, there are indications that both India and China once contained larger populations than now, while that great breeding ground of men, from which issued swarms that overran both countries and sent great waves of people rolling upon Europe, must have been once far more populous. But the most marked change is in Asia Minor, Syria, Babylonia, Persia, and in short, that vast district which yielded to the conquering arms of Alexander. Where were once great cities and teeming populations are now squalid villages and barren wastes. We're really getting those facts out there, aren't we, George? It is somewhat strange that among all the theories that have been raised, that of a fixed quantity to human life on this earth has not been broached. It would at least better accord with historical fact than that of the constant tendency of population to outrun subsistence. It is clear that population has here ebbed and there flowed. Its centers have changed. New nations have arisen and old nations declined. Sparsely settled districts have become populous and populous districts have lost their population. But as far back as we can go without abandoning ourselves wholly to inference, There is nothing to show continuous increase or even clearly to show an aggregate increase from time to time. The advance of the pioneers of peoples has, so far as we can discern, never been into uninhabited lands. Their march has always been a battle with some other people previously in possession. Behind dim empires, vaguer ghosts of empire loom. That the population of the world must have had its small beginnings, we confidently infer, for we know that there was a geologic era when human life could not have existed, and we cannot believe that men sprang up all at once, as from the dragon teeth sowed by Cadmus, yet through long vistas, where history, tradition, and antiquity shed a light that is lost in faint glimmers, we may discern large populations. And during these long periods the principle of population has not been strong enough to fully settle the world, or even so far as we can clearly see materially, to increase its aggregate population. Compared with its capacity to support human life, the earth as a whole is yet most sparsely populated. How we doing? Um, we'll keep going a little bit. There is another broad general fact which cannot fail to strike anyone who, thinking of this subject, extends his view beyond modern society. Malthusianism predicates a universal law, that the natural tendency of population is to outrun subsistence. If there be such a law, it must, wherever population has attained a certain density, become as obvious as any of the great natural laws which have been everywhere recognized. How is it, then, that neither in classical creeds and codes, nor in those of the Jews, the Egyptians, the Hindus, the Chinese, nor any of the peoples who have lived in close association and have built up creeds and codes, do we find any injunctions to the practice of the prudential restraints of Malthus? But that, on the contrary, the wisdom of the centuries, the religions of the worlds, have always inculcated ideas of civic and religious duty the very reverse of those which the current political economy enjoins, and which Annie Besant is now trying to popularize in England. These appeals to history and tradition, I don't know, they kind of cut both ways, because George is advocating for a kind of universal truth in his land use that has heretofore, especially at the time of his writing, not been universally acknowledged. Anyway, it is, yes, Table Cat in the chat says, it is time for a heavy gorge on Henry George. We're almost done. I will read one more paragraph today. And it must be remembered that there have been societies in which the community guaranteed to every member employment and subsistence. John Stuart Mill says in Book 2, Chapter 12, Section 2, that to do this without state regulation of marriages and births would be to produce a state of general misery and degradation. Quote, these consequences, he says, have been so often and so clearly pointed out by authors of reputation that ignorance of them on the part of educated persons is no longer pardonable. End quote. Yet in Sparta, in Peru, in Paraguay, as in the industrial communities which appear almost everywhere to have constituted the primitive agricultural organization, there seems to have been an utter ignorance of these dire consequences of a natural tendency. Alright, that was a little history lesson with George. Looks like he's got some more facts to drop. We'll be back next time.